A treatment for obesity is on the horizon. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and this is Plain English lesson number 556. Here at Plain English, we help you upgrade your English with lessons about current events and trending topics. You'll get exposure to a wide variety of concepts, a wide variety of words, and you'll even learn something besides English too. On today's lesson, we'll talk about a new treatment for obesity, which has the potential to improve the health of many, many millions of people. In the second half of the lesson, I'll show you what it means to have something to spare. Now, as you're listening, if you think that you'd like to engage a little more with this topic, you can do that on our special lesson homepage. This is lesson 556. So plainenglish.com/556 has all the resources we produce for this topic, and a lot of them are free. So check that out, plainenglish.com/556. Loosely defined, obesity is a condition in which someone has excess body fat that could negatively affect the person's health. It's a significant risk factor for chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and over 13 types of cancer. The easy way to think about it is this: obesity itself is not a killer, but it invites other conditions that can significantly reduce the quality and length of a person's life. Taking the long view of humanity, you might say that obesity is a good problem to have. It's better than starvation. Perhaps, but it's still a big problem. Worldwide, over 1 billion people suffer from obesity, about 650 million adults, and, worryingly, 350 million children. Of them, 4 million die prematurely each year. That's not all. Obesity causes people to miss work, lowering their own personal economic outcomes over the long run. The costs to the healthcare system are high, and this is a condition that is impossible to hide. For children, the stigma of being overweight can be unbearable and lead to a life of anxiety and poor mental health. Adults can face discrimination in the workforce for their entire careers. Obesity used to be considered a rich world problem, but that's no longer true. It's affecting low and middle income countries just as much, if not more than, wealthier countries. Obesity affects about 40% of people in countries like Mexico, Iran, and South Africa. And the people in rich countries that are obese are often the ones with the lowest incomes. This is important to understanding the problem. The traditional answer to obesity has been diet and exercise, but in many ways, these are luxuries in the modern world. People work longer hours at more sedentary jobs. Household chores that used to require manual labor are now easy with home appliances. And the most affordable food is the most processed and least healthy. So, to maintain a healthy diet and to maintain a strict exercise regimen requires time and money. And that's why obesity is common among populations that don't have time and money to spare. Now, 2 treatments are coming to the market that may help with the struggle against obesity. They are called GLP-1 agonists. They do a few things. They slow the rate at which food leaves your stomach, making you feel full for longer. They affect the signals to the brain that affect hunger, helping with cravings. And they affect the way fat is processed, leading to lower weight gain from dietary fat. Novo Nordisk, a Dutch company, and Eli Lilly, an American one, are both introducing treatments for obesity. Patients in early trials have lost about 20% of their body fat on average. If these treatments perform in the real world like they have in trials, they have the potential to radically change one of the most prevalent health conditions in the world. A lot of drugs and treatments promise to change the world. This one could be for real. Like many things in pharmaceuticals, or indeed science in general, these treatments were discovered almost by accident. Novo Nordisk, for example, specializes in diabetes treatment. And in trials of diabetes drugs, the company found that many people were losing weight. Doctors started prescribing diabetes drugs off-label. That means they were prescribing a legal drug, but not for the reasons the drug was approved. Doctors were prescribing diabetes drugs to patients without diabetes, but who were obese, and these treatments worked against obesity. Ironically, drug companies had all but given up on finding a treatment for obesity. Previous efforts were ineffective. One previous drug left some patients blind from taking it. But now the race is on to develop and market a treatment for one of the world's most stubborn diseases. If these treatments continue to show promise, it could be a huge net positive for the world. But it's not the silver bullet you may be thinking. First, it's not as easy as popping a pill and eating with abandon. In fact, the treatments are not pills at all, but injections. So they are not easy or convenient to take. Second, patients that go off these treatments tend to put on all their lost weight again. So many people who go on this drug for obesity might need to take it for the long run, even for life. In this way, it's similar to statins, drugs that lower cholesterol. Here's another consideration. You can easily imagine a dystopian world in which rail-thin influencers on social media encourage their followers to take this drug to get skinny like them. Actually, you don't have to imagine this world. These treatments are already being called the skinny pen on TikTok. This is not a welcome development in a social media world that already pushes girls toward eating disorders. Cost is also an issue. These treatments cost about $1,000 per month in America. With time, that should come down, especially if governments and insurance companies can negotiate lower prices in exchange for broad coverage. But while the sticker price is high, obesity's cost to the world is even higher. The name of the Eli Lilly drug is Mounjaro. And as I was reading about this topic, I went down a rabbit hole. That means I got distracted researching something deeper and deeper. The rabbit hole I went down was this: how do drugs get these names? Who comes up with them? And it's surprising. So I'm going to invite you down that rabbit hole with me on Thursday. I'll tell you what I learned. How do prescription drugs get their names? It's more interesting than you might think. That's coming up on Thursday, but for now, we have an English expression. Today, I'm going to show you how to use the verb to spare. If you have something to spare, you have more of it than you need. Spare is a word that means extra, more than what is needed. There is a cruel rhyme in English. Monarchies want to produce two sons, an heir and a spare. That means one son to take over the throne, and then one extra son just in case something happens to the first one. And that is why Prince Harry's book is called Spare. He was the second son in a monarchy. Anyway, when we use the term to have something to spare, it means you have more of it than you need. Today, we were talking about obesity. Several lifestyle and societal factors have combined to make obesity more prevalent. Not as many people work physically demanding jobs. Plus, a lot of food is processed and is less healthy. To ward off obesity then requires time and money. You need the time to shop for and prepare healthier food. And if you work at a desk job, you need to find time outside of working hours to get your exercise in. But a lot of people do not have time and money to spare. They do not have extra time and extra money left over after they have met all their other obligations. Here's something you might hear in an office environment. Do you have a minute to spare? That means, do you have an extra minute, just 1 minute, that you don't need to meet your other obligations? You might say that if you need help for a small task. Now, those of us who have worked in offices, we know that do you have a minute to spare? That doesn't really mean 1 minute. So if you don't want to help, you can say, I honestly don't have a minute to spare. That's something you might say if you're in a major hurry or if you're super busy. In school, I used to hate timed tests. In a timed test, you had to take a test and finish it in a certain amount of time. I always felt pressured, and the pressure would mount because some students in the class would finish with time to spare. Some students would finish like 15 minutes before the end of the allotted time. They had more time than they needed. They finished with time to spare. And what would happen is I'd see someone stand up, smugly pack up it was always a girl, pack up her things and deliver the test to the teacher in the front of the room with a look of self-satisfaction on her face. She finished with 15 minutes to spare, and the rest of us were like, what are we doing wrong if she's already done? Have you ever had to cook or just order food for a large number of people? It's impossible to know how much people will eat, and it's better to have more than to have less. So when there are large gatherings of people, there's usually some food to spare. I used to work in a pretty big office in Chicago, and there would always be meetings. And some of those meetings had lunch. And very often, they had lunches to spare after the meetings. And they just put them in the kitchen for anyone to take. So for us, as employees, even if we weren't part of a lunch meeting, we could still sometimes snag a free meal if one of the other meetings had food to spare, if one of the other meetings had more food than they needed. A critic is a person who writes about art and literature and theater and things like that. So think about the whole profession of people who write about architecture or music. They evaluate it, they analyze it, they say what's good and what's not good, but they're not the people producing the product. So here's a quote about that profession. A critic is a man who knows the way but can't drive the car. And that is a quote by a theater critic, Kenneth Tynan. A critic is a man who knows the way but can't drive the car. There's a funny scene in an old TV show, Seinfeld. Two women are in the bathroom, one in each stall. One realizes she's out of toilet paper and asks the woman in the other stall if she has any to spare. And the other woman says, I don't have any to spare. I can't spare a square. And that means she can't give up even one square to help another person in need. Well, that's all for today's Plain English, March 20th, 2023. This was lesson number 556. So you can find the full lesson, including transcripts, at plainenglish.com/556. Remember, coming up on Thursday, we're going to talk about how prescription drugs get their names. That will be number 557 coming up Thursday. See you then.